Ms. Katie McFarland, thank you so much for joining me.
It's an honor and a pleasure, Roman. Thank you for having me.
So my first question, very topical. The cartels were finally designated as official terrorist organizations.
Right.
Different cartels, several different families. What does that mean? Like, what does that open up for the U.S. government to be able to do?
All right, so by officially designating them as cartels, it opens up a lot of funding streams that you might not otherwise been able to do. It also opens up a lot of diplomatic steps that you can take against individuals, against their families, to prevent them from accessing, banking systems, accessing, anything to do with the United States. Mm-hmm. So it's a technical, it's an important, but it's in a lot of ways a technical designation. I mean, we already know they're bad guys, right?
Right.
But now it gives us the tools that we can use to go after them.
So the things you mentioned were more like financial and digital.
Yeah.
What about like a kinetic war? Like, can we actually start to see a kinetic warfare situation down there?
Look, we are potentially putting U.S. troops on the border, which the United States has never done, is to put American troops on American soil. We have laws against that. But we are now putting those troops on the border because we think of it as a war. The cartels are better armed and more lethally armed and have fewer rules of engagement than a lot of militaries in the world. So we need to put the best against the guy. What was the expression? You don't want to bring a gun to a knife fight?
Yeah.
And for too long, we've just taken
No, wait.
I
was like, wait a minute.
Sorry,
You're trying to trick me?
Tricky. But you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. And for too long, we brought that knife to the gunfight on the border. Now we're bringing a gun to the gunfight.
Is there a situation where, because now, technically we're right next door to a country where pockets of it are actually controlled by what we have designated as terrorist organizations.
Yes.
So can we expect to see like an Afghanistan-style situation where we're actually having to send troops, control certain areas, build locations that our own troops can start making missions and runs?
President Trump has been pretty clear that he wants to be a peacemaker, not a war maker. So if the defense of the United States really, first of all, secure the border, and then make sure that the stuff that's coming, the fentanyl, for example, that's coming into the United States, that's no longer coming into the United States. Now, if Mexico were to ask us for help, I think that would be something the president would probably consider. But right now, we don't want to invade anybody. We don't want to have, assassination squads, I don't think. But the key is to just protect our border. Make sure that as we send people back, especially convicted criminals who are here in the United States illegally and are in jails and they're rapists and they're other violent crimes, send them back and make sure they don't come back.
Do you think that for the kinetic portion, it might be the case that the U.S. will be training and working alongside with the Mexican special forces and assisting them in going after the cartels within Mexico?
We do that with a lot of countries where we help train their militaries in particular, because ours are the best, right? And so I certainly can see that as a possibility, but that's up to the Mexican government. That's not our call. That's up to them.
Right. Okay. Well, I hope it works out. I have a 2-year-old kid at home, and I'm for every one of these conflicts, including this one, especially this one, I'm thinking, 16 years from now, will the events today spark some kind of bad situation where my kid turns 18 and he has to go fight a war that could have been prevented right now? That's always my thinking.
So here's the thing: a smart person figures out how to solve a crisis. A wise person prevents the crisis. And I look at the attitude that President Trump is having. We have never really used our economic power. Our trade, we're the biggest market in the world, for example. Every country needs to sell stuff to us more than we need to buy stuff from them. We're self-sufficient in energy and other things, in agriculture, energy. So we don't need anybody, but they all need us. That's an enormous amount of leverage that we've never really used. And that's why when President Trump, to his enormous credit, he's a businessman, he understands that. When he's talking to countries and when he wants them to do something they don't want to do, he just threatens to cut off trade. They're in a position where they have to do it, whether it's Colombia, the country, whether it's Canada, whether it's Mexico. And that's the kind of pressure I see this president doing, and that's going to prevent crises down the road.
Okay, so speaking of that, I wanted to shift a little bit to Ukraine, but then also I want to use it as kind of a segue to something more broader. When Trump first came into office, soon after he came in, he began to talk about the possibility of ending the war, and he floated, at least colloquially, the idea of ceding some territory to Russia, basically some of Ukraine's territory to Russia, as just as an option that's on the table. When he said that, the German chancellor and the German defense minister separately, they came out, they condemned it, the idea that any land would be ceded back to, well, not back, but I guess to Russia, etc. So the elite class, and sort of the class represented by the German chancellor and the German defense minister, they came out in opposition to it. However, I just want to show you something. I found this just a few days ago. This is a cell phone that was recovered off of a dead Ukrainian soldier. He was on the front line. He was found in the trenches. These are his Google search history. So these are what he was searching for right before he died. So let me just tell you what he was searching for. Ukraine-Russia negotiations. The war will end in 2025. Trump talks when? Trump stop war. Trump on negotiations. Trump aid to Ukraine. Trump, when will the war end? Putin talks. And it just goes on. And so reading this, and it's like, I can just imagine this young guy in this trench just Googling, like, when will Trump end?
When is this going to end? How is it going to end? And when?
And so I guess my question is, you have the elites who are like, no, we can't, we can't stop this war. We can't cede any land. The troops on the ground are like, just end it. This is crazy. My life is here, and of course that's somebody's son and that's somebody's brother. Is this example sort of the perfect example of populists versus elites across the world?
When the Germans do this, when the German government or the French government or the leaders of these countries say, well, America, you got to do more. We can't reward Putin. We can't. What are they saying? Well, they're not even paying for it. They're expecting the United States to pay for the war that they won't pay for to defend them. Meanwhile, they're all trading with Russia. Look, the reason President Trump has said, I want to end this war, is because he wants to have an economic relationship with Ukraine. And then the other thing that President Trump says is, Ukraine, why are you not having elections? Zelensky suspended elections. If his country is behind him, fine, that's great. But we should be negotiating with a leader who represents the interests of his country. We don't know that right now. Maybe, maybe not. But until they have elections, we really don't know.
All right, just a pause here for a super quick moment. I'd like to introduce today's sponsor, which is an awesome company called Patriot Mobile. For well over a decade, Patriot Mobile has unabashedly been America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And when I say only, I really mean it. They're the only one. They're an awesome company that values getting real information out to the public, which is, of course, why they sponsor a channel like ours. And also, by switching your cell phone plan to Patriot Mobile, you're essentially voting with your dollars. That's because, unlike the other companies, every dollar you spend with them, it goes to support the First and the Second Amendments, the sanctity of life, as well as U.S. veterans and first responders. They're a company that actually supports traditional American values, both in principle, but also in their real-world actions. And the best part is that the service is actually good. They have solid nationwide coverage because they operate on all three of the major networks. 100% of their customer service staff is based right here in America, and so talking to them is easy. You can keep your phone number, you can keep your phone, or you can actually upgrade your phone if you so wish, and they make the entire switching process super simple. Basically, if you currently have cell phone service, you can get cell phone service with Patriot Mobile with a coverage guarantee. And so consider making the switch. Just head on over to patriotmobile.com/Roman, or you can just call 972-PATRIOT. And best of all, if you use promo code Roman, they'll give you a free month of service. Again, that's promo code Roman, R-O-M-A-N. I'll also throw their details. They'll be down in the description box below.
Well, I noticed, so you have CPAC here in D.C.
Yeah.
I've been walking around. There's CPACs now in Mexico, Hungary, South Korea. Do you feel like this example of the Ukrainian soldier dying for this war to end, the elite, defense minister in Germany saying we can't end it? Do you feel like the CPAC movement growing in all these different countries is like the global version of that, like where populism is just like starting to come together and starting to see like, hey, there's a real misalignment here between us and them?
You're very observant to have caught the drift, because that's what we've seen. I'm on the board of CPAC, I've been on for many years, and what we've seen in the last couple of years, but especially this year, is that countries are sending, politicians, leaders, civic leaders, they all want to come to CPAC in the U.S. They want to figure out, how did you guys do it? How were you the ideas factory? How were you the conservative movement in America? You elected President Trump twice. And how can we do that in their own countries? Because we feel that, like President Trump, the movement that President Trump led against the established elites, whether it's Wall Street, whether it's the bureaucracy, whether it's media, whether it's Hollywood, this is a grassroots movement in the United States that elected Donald Trump, not a bunch of fat cats. And so the people who are representing our kind of thought in other parts of the world, they're coming here because they want to do it in their own countries, which is why we at CPAC have decided we're going global. I mean, we are going to help, whether it's Hungary, whether it's Brazil, whether it's Japan, whether it's Korea, Australia, European country, they all want to have a CPAC in their own country, and we want to help them. We have shown that populism, that the people, that the little guy can call his government to attention and to order. And that's not what's happening. The opposite is what's happened in the last 20 or 30 years. It's the global elites have run everything. And first of all, it's not democratic. And secondly, they're not very good at it. I mean, they've been wrong about just about every major issue. So I think that what you're picking up, very few people are understanding this, but I think when you're walking down the hall and you're picking up the vibe shift, you're right. It is a global vibe shift.
Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Roman. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you.